Right, well, we're here at Silverstone, the home of British motorsport, for a very special occasion here. As you know, this is the interview with a view, and this one is with a very special difference. It's the first ever video edition, and I'd like to introduce my good friend. You might know him as the Aspiring Aussie. I know him as Ash Miller. Ash, good to see you. How you doing?
Thank you very much.
Right now, let's get on to your background in racing. How did you sort of get bitten by the motorsport bug?
Well, the motorsport bug found me quite epically, I think, when I was about 6 years old. My dad used to have a BMW. They used to take the track days, pretty big for the 6 Series. So, yeah, it's kind of started with that. Passenger in the car, couldn't see over the dashboard for anything, but just loved the sensation of the racing. And at one point there, I think it just caught on. That's just what I wanted to do from then on.
We were talking on the way down here about your first foray into karting, and you said to me that you were putting on your dad's shirt at age 6 saying, "Dad, buy me a go-kart, you're impeding my Formula 1 career."
Yeah, that's how the story goes apparently, when I was still quite young. My dad was talking to a group of friends, and apparently came up and tugged on the shirt and said, "Dad, you're holding up my F1 career," basically. So it was quite a few years before he ended up cracking under the pressure, really, and ended up getting into go-kart racing when I was about 12 years old.
Yeah, and obviously you met current Formula 4 competitor Ollie Ray,
yes,
and Paul Granger, the man behind Visions to Go, who we had a great chat with last night.
Yes, yeah.
Now, obviously, it's been a very difficult season for you so far. Obviously, you came into the UK last season, end of the season for the Clio Cup there, as you finished accredited 13th on your first outing, skipping out Victoria with Danny Buxton and the team there. What's sort of happening at the moment for you? Obviously, there's been financial constraints with trying to get back into racing. Obviously, you're working hard as ever behind the scenes, like every young fledgling driver, to get yourself back and ready for 2012. I mean, what are the plans hopefully for 2013?
2013, hopefully we will be with the Clio Cup. I've been working really hard to try and put something together for next year. I kind of abandoned thought of being on the grid for this year, with the efforts going into next year to really put 100% effort into next year. So hopefully a couple of rounds doing the Britcar type stuff as well. Got some good contacts there. So just working towards next year, and any racing that comes my way, I'll jump into and hopefully keep going with that.
Now, as you can probably hear the loudspeakers at the moment, we're about half an hour away from the start of the Britcar 24-hour endurance race, which I'll be covering for the checkered flag. So that's the other reason why I'm here. But Ash is a very multi-talented, multifaceted individual. Now, not to mention the fact he's an Irish dancing champion, electro. Now, from what I've seen of this guy, he is very, very good. Very, very good. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the love or the passion for it. But you also do a lot of writing, motorsport writing predominantly. But you're also an electronic songwriter, are you? One I understand as well. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, how did you sort of get into not just the Irish dancing, but also, like, say, the journalism side of it, but also the music as well? What sort of inspired you to carry on those sort of traits, really?
They're all passions of mine. They're all things that I'm interested in, and I give some time to. The dancing ended up when I was younger, and Riverdance first came out. My parents just said, "We want you to do something active. This looks like fun. Do you want to have a crack?" So myself and my sister, when we were quite young, started doing that, and put 100% effort into it and didn't stop, basically. So anything that I have an interest in, I give 100% to. And the same thing with the riding was just a passion of mine. I used to just ride about motorsport constantly, and ended up getting work out of it. So that worked out quite well. And the same thing with the music.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's I just have passions for all these things, so why not?
Yeah. Now, also, Ash is a champion-winning driver as well, winning the Q1 championship where he was driving in Mazda MX-5s, and our good friend in Melbourne, Australia, Mr. Trent Price, actually raced against Ash, but didn't find this out until they had a recent interview on the road from Rouen, which was quite interesting. That must have felt a bit sort of strange, to say the least, when you started speaking to him.
Yeah, it was quite bizarre. I mean, obviously you do face a lot of people in and out when you're doing different events, and the race we knew that was the inaugural race of Bathurst, and they finally opened up the track for general competition as opposed to just the V8 Supercar round. So it was quite bizarre actually to actually share an experience like this with somebody that years later you kind of find out, you've actually raced against. So that happens all over the place. So.
But there was a very interesting twist that we discussed on the way here again, reference to the 2010 championship. Just tell us a little bit about, obviously you were due to compete with Phillip Island in the final round to hopefully win. And you said to me that you said to you, don't bust your bank balance trying to sort of secure a championship. And then what was it? Just remind us of the story. It's quite interesting from what I remember.
Yeah, it was very interesting. The end of the 2010 season, we were sort of facing the championship battle quite intensely, and we needed to be at Phillip Island for the last round. We needed to turn up basically and race in order to win the championship, because if we dropped the round, we forfeit, and obviously we won't win the championship. So sort of discussed the financial obligations with my dad, and basically it came to the point where we couldn't afford it, on my watch anyway. We really couldn't afford it, and my dad was adamant that yes, we could afford it. We need to get to this race meeting, so we went down to the race meeting and actually had our truck stopped as well while we were down there, which is a completely other story. Which is quite. We ended up having to chase our truck at 3 o'clock in the morning while we were driving out of Phillip Island in a rental car, while two robbers had nicked off in a race car. That's another one completely.
Well,
I
there
think.
we go.
And that's another story completely, but basically got to the point where got to the end of the race meeting, had a chat to my dad, and I kind of said, look, how much did that cost us? And he said, yeah, you had to eat with superannuation in order to get us there. So a lot of commitment from my dad to get us to the end of the championship, and it was from then on I kind of went, no, I won't let him sacrifice his future in order to keep mine going. So so that was the end of his contribution.
Which then obviously with your foray into the Air Asia AO Cup, the final round last season was off your own back. You moved over here in mid-March, I take it, with Paul following suit a couple of months later. And then obviously you ran Lotus Leases.
So it's all been, everything that happened since the end of 2010 has been my own thing, and a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication has gone into firstly racing over in Australia to try to get drives, and then coming over here all off my own back was hugely big commitment. And the Lotus was good fun. I lived with the guy that ran the Lotus, so it made things easier. As long as it was a transport, we just catch the lift places. So so it's been a huge commitment to end up this far, and it'll be another steady commitment to end up going the next step as well.
Exactly. Well, as always with Interview with You, it is truly interactive. Now, we've had a barrage of questions, haven't we?
Which I will find here in a moment, because you emailed them through to me convenently.
Yes.
If I could just find that. And I think there we are. I think that's your cue.
Well, first of all, would you ever drive a Formula One? And if you had the choice, who would you drive?
I would. Definitely no-brainer. If I were given the chance to drive Formula One, and I would drive Lotus. Absolutely. To be a chance to be either replacing Kimi, which probably isn't likely, but to be Kimi's teammate, I think would be awesome. And they look like they're on balance at the moment, so the smart money I think would be on Lotus resources and things like that. It would be really good.
Now, one of the funny things that we decided to do is go a bit outside the box and make it. I think the crazier the better, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've had some very interesting questions, like saying, why have you not yet been snapped up for a modelling contract? We're getting some very obscure ones. I mean,
we've been looking forward to hearing these actually, because I made sure that this is a complete surprise. This is completely off the cuff. So
Now, how long did it take to get to your current level of racing? Your racing standing, you reckon? How you sort of develop your techniques, getting into the apex and everything like that. So,
in terms of my career so far has spanned 12 years, so it's taken like the full 12 years. Obviously there was a break in between go-karts and cars, because we were transitioning, because we were trying to get the budget to get our next building our MX-5 that we raced in Australia. So all up, probably 12 years worth to get to this sort of level, so, and it's been, a lot of people doing it shorter, but they're full-time racing, so, but for myself it's been 12 years worth of hard work so far, and
putting in the hours behind the wheel, in the gym,
as
we were discussing the other day as well. Now, another one was, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and who's that from?
The best piece of advice I think that I've ever been given was probably I suppose you never give up, and persistence pays, basically. And I think the first person to say that to me was probably, it's been said to me quite a bit, but I think the first person was my dad.
Yeah.
Both my parents actually, and that was to do with the dancing. Was just don't give up, just keep on, basically. And it's proved that, because with particularly the dancing, it was 5 years before I even got anywhere with dancing and never won anything with dancing, you know. But that was just pure persistence, you know. So yeah, persistence pays, basically, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So there you go, guys. If you want to be a racing driver, you've got to be persistent.
Exactly.
You know?
Don't give up. Just don't give up.
That's a bit like me with the writing. So it's a bit of a mantra there, really, isn't it?
And it's who you know. That's another good piece of advice. Who you know or what you know.
Exactly.
That's another good piece of advice.
And thanks very much to Paul, who's actually currently filming. Paul's one of the many marshals that help with regards to the great work that goes on at British racetracks all around the country. So
you can't forget the guys behind the scenes.
Exactly. So he's nodding in agreement. You know, we've got to thank people that, you know, help us out. I mean, Paul's been helping me out ever since I met him at Donington earlier on this year. So thanks to him, really.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Paul.
Now, if you could be any animal, which one and why?
Any animal? God, I tell you what, I would probably be a cheetah. Okay, because they're the quickest.
Yeah.
You know?
That's fair enough. That's right. One of my loyal Facebook followers actually has said, "Why is racing not an Olympic sport?" Now this has been discussed on Twitter.
It has been. Yeah, this has been quite a debate actually. It's actually quite topical. So I think because it's hard to get parity. That's one thing. With the Olympics, you've got the athletes that, you know, the ones that are going to win. They're going to be the ones that are trained to win.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose with motorsport you've got the element of car. So if you don't win an Olympic race because the car broke down, it seems to be a little bit unfair. So I think parity and fairness is probably the level playing field basically, and it's not a true test of the athlete's abilities unless you would make cars that are completely identical and completely bulletproof. You know, so unless they're racing trolleys, which are all pretty.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, skill of the driver.
Yeah,
same track layout maybe.
Yeah.
Now, we've had a nice question from a good friend of mine, Luke Smith, editor of RichlandF1.com.
Yes.
Ash, if you could compete in any motorsport championship, anything from it being Formula 1, British touring cars, Clios, or even the iconic Le Mans,
Yes.
what would you most like to race in and why?
Le Mans, absolutely, because that's always been the career direction I've really wanted to take. It's prestigious, it's a true test of a driver's ability as well. Given the fact, I mean, not taking anything away from any other global racing series, but Formula 1, you know, these guys, you've got the racing for 2 hours, it's almost more compared to Le Mans, it's a sprint, essentially. With Le Mans, it's a test of intelligence, it's a test of strategy, a test of driver's ability, both like mental and physical, you know, a real endurance event at its pinnacle. So for me, Le Mans would be the one that I'd jump at doing.
Okay. And we've had a nice little follow-up question from someone called Flavio's Apprentice. I seem to get random questions. I don't know why.
The more random, the better. I like it.
But it's actually in relation to Le Mans. That if you would want to drive any of the Le Mans winning cars from any era, like say Porsche 958s, Audi R18s, R10s, R8s, which one would it be?
It's a fantastic question. Of all the eras, I think for me, I'm not quite sure which car, but any car from the early 70s would be unreal.
Yeah.
And around the era of the Mans the movie, you know, all those classic sports cars, you know, were just serious machines, really. And aside from that, you can't go past things like the Silk Cut Jag from '88. I think that was such a machine.
Martin Brundle winning.
Yes, I would jump at driving that. That was just iconic, super pacey, and as the sun comes out, unbelievable. We've got sun in England.
I know, it's about 16 degrees, a little bit of cloud, but the sun's shining through.
It's going to be a good day for the race, I think.
Definitely, good start. We also had a very interesting question, and now Mark Webber famously received a leg up from David Campese.
Yes.
So if you walked along and found Mal Meninga in the same airport, what would you do to get his attention?
Probably buy him a coffee. I don't know. To be fair, I'm not too sure. Yeah, I'd probably just go up and introduce myself. Obviously, I don't want to take too much of your time.
Yeah.
You look like you're thirsty. Can I get you a coffee? And I need some money.
That's always the thing.
I'll slip that underneath to see if he notices. I think.
Yeah.
So,
Had another one from Duffman. When you win a race, do you scream "This bud's for you" or is it Miller time?
Oh, I like it. I like it. I don't. At any time. I wouldn't mind going a Bud.
Yeah.
But
what would you?
what would I scream? What would I scream?
Well, I think it's,
out of the two, so I've got the option of the two.
you've got the option. Of
It's
the two.
Miller time.
Ah,
It has to be.
definitely.
It's Miller time.
Definitely.
You know, I think that's quite appropriate. Yeah.
Now, obviously, we mentioned our good friend Trent in
Yeah.
Melbourne. He actually posed an interesting question about the merger between Gran Am and ALMS. What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts, I think it can only be good for the series because, I mean, the American Le Mans series is almost like it's a cast off of the European side of things. And you've got the Grand Am series, which is very American, and to see a merger between the two, where you've got, I'm not too sure that they're going to open up Le Mans as such to the Grand Am style prototypes, which I think would be fantastic in itself because it becomes a truly global series. You know, so I mean, my thoughts on it are that it can only be good. And it would be very curious to see just how that affects crossbreeding in technology as well, and the influences that the Mons series will have on the Grand Am, you know, the classic Grand Am kind of style of things as well. I think it'd be very interesting to see how they influence each other and mould together as a bit of a melting pot for what are two, you know, really exceptional sports car series.
Right, well, actually, this is the final question because we've just about run out of time here on Interview with You. But my good friend Anders from Anders Holmberg from Sweden, basically said that how do you adjust to driving with grip upside down in comparison to being on the Northern Hemisphere rather than being down in Oz? You know, how do you find that?
Well, I think the tyres have to be on the opposite rotation, don't they? I think
do they?
Yeah, I think so.
And what about the weather? You know, like the rain if that comes flying down.
No, exactly. It falls in a different way here, I think, as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think the thing you have to watch out for, obviously, you know, the drainage and things like that being the opposite way as well. You know, aquaplaning happens differently and things like this. You know?
Yeah. So
I think that's the question. I think in terms of the question to pick, I think Anders. I think you've won that one. I think.
So just on behalf of myself and Ash, Anders, you've won the Star Prize. We'll let you know by email as soon as we can tell you what it is. But thanks everyone for tuning in here. We hope you enjoyed the coverage of the Britcar 24 Hours, and I'll see you soon for another interview.
Pleasure, Alex. Thank you
nice
very much.
Nice to meet you.
And you too. Thank you very much.